Well, there's a party here tonight.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Kiley, president of the Ad Club, and welcome to another episode of Between Milk and Water. In advance of our upcoming Women's Leadership Forum, we decided to really focus on some of the great women of Boston, and we are so thrilled to have PNC Bank as our partner to do this. So they've been working with us closely on this. And we're going to focus on female leadership in the community that are especially women that are making a difference. So we are delighted to have Tanisha Sullivan with us today. Tanisha, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Kathy. I'm very excited to join you today for this conversation.
Yes, just a little bit about Tanisha. Tanisha, you are the Associate General Counsel of Industrial Affairs at Santa Fe Genzyme. But that's not enough. You're a woman who felt she needed two jobs. So you are also the president of Boston's NAACP.
Yes.
So welcome, Tanisha, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Specifically, I was delighted, and I know this moved once, but I was delighted that you were able to join us on Juneteenth. Yeah, so there's lots to talk about. So how are you? How did you celebrate today? What was your way of embracing Juneteenth today?
Well, let me start by, again, saying thank you for having me. Certainly want to acknowledge PNC for supporting this. And of course, it is, as it turns out, we're here on Juneteenth. And so for those who don't know or perhaps aren't familiar with this holiday, it's one that has been celebrated within the Black community for quite some time. And it marks the day, June 19th, 1865, when Black people who were enslaved in Texas, Galveston, Texas, finally got the word that President Lincoln's executive order, the Emancipation Proclamation, went into effect on January 1st, 1863. So literally 2.5 years later, they got the word, and it was a message of freedom. And so this is a day that we commemorate, and that we are reminded of our mission toward freedom, because as we know, and as certainly the most recent events here in the country, whether we're talking about the COVID-19 pandemic, both health and economic crises that followed, that public health crisis, or we talk about what we're seeing today against the backdrop of so many, once again, so many killings of Black people. A week ago, I would say most recently, George Floyd, who we all, whose killing, whose murder we all have now borne witness to. But unfortunately, last Friday, we have to add Rayshard Brooks to that list.
Right.
And so today is a day of remembrance that we must continue in this work and to continue to fight for the elimination of systemic racism.
Absolutely. And you're such a wonderfully passionate person. I always like to, when I'm talking to someone like you, I love to go back to the beginning.
Okay.
And just know a little bit about you, because I read about your mom and the incredible impact she had on you and your life. So talk to us a little bit about, at age 6, she was already telling you about the NAACP, and she was already telling you about all these issues that you've now become such a part of solving. So talk about your mom.
Well, my mother, I'm very fortunate. A lot of people say it, but I really do believe it. I feel it every day. I'm very fortunate to have a mom who has always stood as an example for the power of women, the power that we possess within, and even more importantly, the importance of us sharing with our community, our gifts and our talents. And so my mom did introduce me very early on to service within the community. And I was fortunate to become involved with the NAACP, as you mentioned, at a very early age, about 6 or so. And my mom also, through her work, really helped me to understand the importance when it comes to civil rights, when it comes to social justice, the importance of economic opportunity, and really the connection that economic opportunity has to the civil rights movement and also to the elimination of systemic racism. So my mother was the founder and publisher of what is known as the Black Pages of New England. This was many years ago, in the 90s. My mother co-founded this publication, and it was meant to really serve as a resource guide within the Black community so that we would know who the Black business owners are in our community, but also as a resource for major corporations for their supplier diversity program so that they could do business with Black-owned businesses. An incredibly successful publication. The work that my mom did then is work that I am fortunate to continue now in the NAACP. But the unfortunate thing is that today in 2020, we need the directory probably even more now than we did back then, because there's just so much more work to be done to close the racial wealth gap, even here in Massachusetts.
Absolutely. Yeah. So go back a little bit. So at age 6, you get introduced to the NAACP. And then as you're growing up, talk a little bit. So you went to school, you went to high school here.
Yep.
In Boston.
Yep. I went to Thayer Academy in Braintree, graduated from Thayer Academy in Braintree. While I was in high school, I also participated in a fantastic NAACP program called the AXO program, which is a program for high school students to really to share their talents, academic talents, as well as a talent in the arts. I was fortunate to win locally here in Boston and to represent Boston nationally in contemporary vocal. Once upon a time, Kathy, I was a singer.
You think you're too soon before this is over. You may have to close on a song.
Many moons ago. So I was very fortunate to grow up around here. My parents are both Bostonians. My grandparents are Bostonians. And in fact, my dad has been just an incredible influence on me when it comes to my passion for educational equity and opportunity. My dad's graduate of Boston Public Schools and joined the Boston School Department back in 1974, September of 1974, as the district was beginning its desegregation process through busing. And my dad worked really on the front lines in transportation and in assignments for many years with BPS to help the district with integration and desegregation. And he went on to become the head of the John D. O'Brien prior to his retirement after about 40 years in the district. One of the things that my dad has always shared with me about Boston Public Schools and about public education is that, of course, public education is an incredibly powerful tool, and the Boston Public Schools is an important institution, but not a perfect institution.
Right.
And he has always instilled in me, even after he himself faced head on a lot of racism growing up and even through his career, he always instilled in me a sense of hope and belief in what's possible. And my dad is just a tremendous role model for me in my advocacy. It's one of the reasons why I'm so incredibly relentless when it comes to public education and really pushing our district to do more for children of color, because I do truly believe that we here in the city can close racial achievement and opportunity gaps, and that we can have a more diverse teaching core. But so much of that I certainly attribute to my dad. So my mom is my economic equality engine, and my dad is my educational equity engine.
Right. It's the perfect balance. And in your case, the perfect storm, because you're out doing it and you're out making it happen. That's incredible. It's a beautiful story. So I could go on and on about Boston education and Boston housing, and I mean, we could wax poetically on that forever. But I also want to touch base a little bit with you on your professional life. And so, right now, you're in the perfect storm, considering that you have two kind of distinct professional lives. One is with the NAACP, and then the other one is with Genzyme. So suddenly, the coronavirus hits. We're all at home. You have teams at both places. You need to motivate people in both places. What is your approach to leading through crisis? How do you manage those two distinct and both in very volatile times?
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is that I never expected to be in a position or to be thrust into a position of having to lead through
a crisis
of this type.
Right.
I mean, we literally have a trifecta,
right,
at minimum. All of them critically important. All of them having, from a leadership standpoint, requiring I think different, certainly aligned, but different skill sets to be activated. From a professional standpoint, people are paid to do the job. Within the NAACP, we are fully volunteers, and so how you motivate, encourage, and empower volunteers during this time is different, right, than how perhaps it's done within the corporate space. And so I do consider it certainly a privilege to have the opportunity to lead in both of these settings. That being said, Kathy, nothing could prepare. I don't think anything could prepare a leader for this moment. And so really what it comes down to is trusting the preparation, in the sense of, trusting that that you've built the team needed to be as agile as possible during times like this, that you've built the relationships both internally and externally to provide support, and that you trust yourself. And I think, at least for me, what I found is that sometimes you might find it hard to believe, but sometimes I second guess myself. And so, really trusting yourself. Right. In times like these, and trusting that you've done, that your work leading up to this point has provided you, again, with the experience necessary to make some very difficult decisions. Because, when you're looking at a public health crisis like COVID-19, and looking at all of the challenges there, and then looking at the economic crisis that comes as a result, plus adding on top of it the racial unrest that is coming to bear, it can be tempting to want to take on everything. Right. Because all of it is so very important. All of it is so very critical. But understanding certainly that we cannot all do everything. We all need to do something. And being able to really empower others on the team to lead in this moment too, right? And trust that others on the team can carry some of this load and again, help to lead. So It's been, again, an incredibly, I will say it's been an incredibly challenging 90 days. But at the same time, it has absolutely given me the opportunity to stretch in my leadership. And in so doing, quite frankly, has helped, I think, to make me an even stronger, more effective leader.
I feel that way about my team. I feel like when this is all over and we come out the other side, I feel like these are the people we went to battle with.
Yes.
And you'll never forget them, and it'll be a bond that you just couldn't replace.
That's right.
But so you and I have something in common, which if we were out having a glass of wine together, we could talk about this probably forever. But you had a huge event. The NAACP had chosen Boston for 2020 to come in and do their huge national event. Then boom, the virus hits.
Yeah.
You have to go virtual, which for the ad club, and that's what we deliver content, and we deliver it through events. That was just mind-bending. I remember the day that it all shut down, and I had seen it coming for a couple of days, but when it hit, I thought, wow, now it's time to reinvent. Yeah. So tell me about how the business community has responded, what you're doing, how you're going to get this done virtually, and what's it going to look like?
You know, it's interesting. I mean, certainly it's a disappointment for so many who were looking forward, not just to, you know, the work of the convention, the topics that would be covered during the convention, but also there were a lot of people, I've heard from a lot of folks, more than I expected, who were just looking forward to the fellowship and the camaraderie.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, here in the city. And so it is certainly a disappointment, among others, that we're not able to convene in person. That being said, certainly the convention this year will go on. It will be virtual. And we're looking forward to, at the end of July, we're looking forward to participating. What's one of the bright spots out of this is that we have found, both here locally and nationally, that going virtual has meant we're able to touch more people. More people are engaging with us on the virtual platform than had been engaging with us in person. And I think, you know, that's just a function of, you know, we all have these like highly demanding lives. We are overscheduled. And so getting from place to place, especially here in Boston with the traffic, that's a whole other podcast.
You know, there's a whole other podcast.
But that's a challenge. But now, because we're, you know, most of us are virtual, what we've seen here locally is that we are engaging where we previously were engaging hundreds, we're now engaging thousands. And for our national office, I mean, we have been holding at least 2 town hall meetings, virtual town halls, since the end of March nationally, and we average between 20 and 40,000 people participating in those town halls. The convention we expected would have about 10,000 people. So we really, for the work aspect of this, and that is really helping people to understand our mission, which is the elimination of racial discrimination and dismantling systemic racism. For the work aspect of this, I think, you know, I'm actually excited because I think the convention is going to give us the opportunity to help educate more people, particularly during this time when there's a heightened awareness about systemic racism, and also give us an opportunity to highlight some of the work that has been done, that has been ongoing, but also some of the work that has transpired over the last 90 days. I think, you know, certainly as an association, NAACP, we're doing even more than we were doing before, but I think that we can say that about many other institutions. And so, but we've all been managing crisis. So this will give us an opportunity in late July to really come together and do a little bit of reflection on where we've been, and also looking forward, because certainly we know this is a big year. There's a lot to come in the fall, and so we all need to be ready.
And will you be focusing on Boston as well?
Yeah. So one of the things that we had initially planned to do with the convention, certainly recognizing it's a national convention, we always plan to have a local element to it. And so in conversations with both the mayor and the governor, they too were disappointed. What we committed to was, still trying to identify ways to have some local elements to what will now be a virtual national convention. And so to that end, we are planning for a citywide service day here in the city of Boston that will have both in-person and virtual opportunities for participation. And so hopefully people will, we will all find something to do on that day. And we're also planning to have some virtual convenings during that time that will kind of overlay with the national convenings, but we'll have a local focus, right? So we'll be looking at, look, the mayor just announced, just issued an executive order, declaring racism a public health crisis in the city of Boston.
Right.
We need to talk about that.
Yep.
And what does that mean? And how can we as a city really lean into that? So it's more, so that the words on the paper actually come to life. Right. So for example, that might be something that we talk about. So we will absolutely have a local element to this.
Right. And Tanisha, I was just looking at my notes here, and I forgot about this actually. You served as the Chief Equity Officer for the Boston Public School System.
Yes.
So I don't want to take up a lot of time with this, but how do you think we're doing with our Boston Public School System?
Yeah. So I
question, and it's another podcast, but
it is another podcast. Well, I've been practicing law now for about 20 years. I have to like count my years, for almost 20 years now. But I did take a hiatus from the practice of law back in 2013, and took on the role of Chief Equity Officer for the Boston Public Schools, and served in that capacity for 2 years prior to returning to the full-time practice of law. It was one of the most rewarding roles I've ever had the privilege of serving in. The work was incredibly difficult. Up until this point, up until 2019, I'd never worked harder in my career, quite frankly, because the work was not only intellectually challenging, but it was also emotionally challenging. Emotional because I saw up close and personal the deep structural and systemic racial and ethnic and other types of inequities that exist in our system. So education, I always tell people, I do have a bias there. I think that there's so much opportunity for us here in the city of Boston to get public education right. It is one of the largest budgets. It is one of the largest budgets, over $1 billion. We invest over $1 billion in public education here in the city of Boston every year. Yet and still, there are so many children, so many families who are not getting what they need. And so I'm also very concerned about even this time with the COVID-19 pandemic, right? I mean, the young people were out of school for 90 days.
Oh, I know.
Right? The Boston Globe reported that 20% of Boston public school students were missing, they couldn't find them.
Right.
So that's deeply troubling. I am hopeful that the Superintendent Casilius, who is in her first year, talk about crisis management in your first year, right, who's in her first year, will be able to, build the team necessary to not just make it through this crisis, but at this point, with how far behind. Our district is, on behalf of our children, I'm hopeful that they will be able to accelerate progress, because otherwise we have a whole generation of children in this city, children and families who will be adversely impacted.
So I'm sitting here and I'm saying, this woman has to run for public office. This woman has to be in politics and do something really big. Well, talk to me.
I'm doing something really big.
Oh, I know you are, but I mean, you need to really do something big.
Okay.
You're amazing. No, you really are.
It truly, I mean, truly is a privilege to serve. I'm very fortunate. You know, when I decided to run for this role back in 2016, can I take you back there? Who would have thunk that, and it was before November of 2016, by the way. Who would have thunk that so much would happen in our nation, so much would happen in our city just in the last 4 years that would really call for many of us to step into leadership in ways that we could have never anticipated. And so I certainly consider it a privilege to be able to serve in this way. And I am absolutely, truly humbled that, you know, that during this time, I'm able to serve in thought partnership with so many of our leaders across the city to help us all make it through this time.
Wonderful. One of the things the Ad Club does every year is we have an event called the Rose Off Awards. And it's typically in the spring. And as we're talking about it now and looking towards 2021 for the Rose Off Awards, or the end of 2020, we're saying, well, we can't give out awards for doing what you're supposed to be doing from the get-go. That I said we've got to stop back padding and now start kicking in the butt.
That's right. Look, if not now, when? I mean, truly, because even when we look at the governor's announcement on Wednesday, we are so very happy to see him filing his legislation on police officer standards and training. But that work started, you know, several years ago. And I can tell you, 90 days ago, we were all, you know, hoping that something, you know, half decent would come through. Right. But this week, what we all knew was that that it had to go even further than what we were pressing for 90 days ago. Right. And even now, we know that, you know, that we have to push the legislature to make it even stronger. This is not a time to, you know, to talk about what can't be done or what, you know, what hasn't been done. It really is the time for us to get this right and be, you know, we say be bold, but truly, when it feels uneasy, to stretch just a little bit more, because we all need to get uncomfortable, whether it's in our conversations or it's in our policy reform or in our legislative action. We all have to reach a point of being uncomfortable, because until we get there, we're just scratching the surface.
Absolutely. I say we've all been shoved into the deep end of the pool. So we all better become really good swimmers.
That's right. Swim.
Yeah, swim.
Or tread water. Do something. Just don't stand still.
It's not the same old at all. And you can't behave that way, or it's actually embarrassing now to treat it the way you would have treated it 90 days ago.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, I'm truly hopeful. I'm excited about what I'm seeing in terms of the different people from different backgrounds getting engaged in this work, people from different backgrounds wanting to learn more about, you know, what they can do to really play a role in this. I like to remind people that we're still a young country.
Very young.
We are, right? We're just a baby in all of this, you know. And although, as they say, we do punch above our weight all the time, we're still young, and so we're still forming. And so there's still an opportunity for each of us truly to play an integral role in helping to solidify who we really are as a nation, who we really are as a commonwealth and as a city. And so I'm encouraged by the new voices that are joining us during this time, because I do believe that it's going to help not only make us stronger, but it's also going to help this work to actually take deeper root.
Yeah, I'm always proud to be a Bostonian.
Yes,
like we carry ourselves well. I'm old enough to have remembered my parents had a bumper sticker that said, "Don't blame me, I'm from Massachusetts." And by the way, when you're ready to run, I have a whole background in marketing and advertising, so I'll be your campaign manager.
Oh, Kathy.
We'll continue that conversation though.
Listen,
but
I'm looking forward to the wine, because you mentioned the glass of wine earlier.
Yes. Absolutely. Anyone who knows me knows you'll get a glass of wine. So I'm looking forward to having you tuning in to the Women's Leadership event, which is live streamed on July 9th, which I cannot believe is around the corner. This has been, I told my team, everyone gets a week off after this event, because putting this on a platform and figuring this all out has been such a trip. But again, this was such a pleasure to have you on our podcast, Between Milk and Water. And again, a huge thank you to PNC Bank for sponsoring this and making all of these possible. And we will follow up and continue this conversation. So thank you so much again. And thank you all for joining us on Between Milk and Water.
Well, there's a party here tonight.